So some 2 years ago, I was having the very first coaching lesson with a student of mine who had been trying to learn Spanish, but to no avail. And it turned out that he had been, learning the language for a few months. And I asked him, "What are you doing to learn Spanish?" And it turns out that he was actually listening to the radio and listening massively in order to understand, in the hope that he would understand everything with time. And of course, listening comprehension, like all good things, takes time, it takes exposure, but you have to learn how to do it. You might be in the same situation right now. Maybe you're learning a language and you're wondering why you still don't understand the language. Why is it so difficult? Why are you struggling? And in this very same video, I'm going to give you some fundamental tips on how to make your listening comprehension fantastic in a relatively short amount of time. So in this video, I'm going to give you the fundamental rules of thumb or tips in order to understand any language quickly and effectively. And we're going to have a very cool extra tip at the end, so please stay tuned. The fundamental rule of thumb in order to understand the language better and better is to get exposed to comprehensible input, that is, input that you can understand. And when you are a beginner, when you first start learning a language, make sure that you always listen and read at the same time. Because if you can read and listen at the same time, you will be able to actually see the words that are being spoken. And this allows you to build a comprehensible input that will help you in the intermediate stage when you can venture into the unknown ground of pure listening. But you have to remember that the listening comprehension process, as well as the language learning process, is not linear, but it's progressive. So always make sure, no matter what stage you're in, that you expose yourself to comprehensible input, the input that you can understand at least to 70 or 80%. How many times have you found yourself sitting in a class and not caring at all about what you were listening? This is common, especially when it comes to language learning at school, at university, because people are not interested. They are in a passive state of mind. And one of the reasons is because they're not interested in what they're listening to. They don't care. They didn't choose the material. They didn't choose the audio or the text. So as an independent language learner, you have the possibility of listening to whatever you like. Make sure that what you listen to is something you find interesting, because if it is interesting for you, your levels of dopamine in your brain will literally skyrocket and you will absorb the content much better. Have you ever found yourself interacting with native speakers in a language you still didn't know well, and you were trying to understand every single word that they were saying to you? Well, I think that a better technique or a better strategy is to simply focus on the big picture. I really like the sentence in English, missing the forest for the trees. You don't want to miss the forest for the trees. So even if you don't understand all the words, focus on the big pictures. Focus on the key words inside a sentence that will give you the meaning of the sentence, even if you don't understand all the elements of the sentence itself. This is really important, so relax. You don't need to understand everything. Just focus on the main things, on the main cues, and focus on the big picture. Every actor sentence in any language is a complex combination of sounds. In order to make your life easier, in order to understand, absorb, and replicate these phonetic patterns, you might want to make your life easier and do things step by step. One very, very easy strategy in order to tackle this problem is very simple. You just slow the audio down. So take the audio track or the audio tracks that you have, play them at normal speed, and then play them a little bit more slowly. In order to do this, you have many possibilities nowadays. For example, you can use free software programs that you can download from the internet, like Odiria or Odiria. But you can also use Google Translate. You can simply put a sentence inside the box and play it, and the second time it will be uttered slowly. So this is very simple. Make sure that you always slow down the audio, look at the bigger picture, look at the details, and make it a habit, especially at the beginning. This will make a big difference. If I say the word listening associated with language learning, probably you will think, okay, listening to a podcast, or listening and watching a movie, or listening to music in a foreign language. That is true, but there are so many other activities you can engage in when it comes to listening. And it's not only what you do, but how you do it and where you put your attention. You can, for example, listen to a podcast just for the sake of listening to it while you're running some errands. But you can also listen to a podcast focusing on the pronunciation and intonation of the language that you're listening to. Or you can even take notes. That is, you're listening to a podcast in a foreign language for the sake of grabbing and absorbing information. So what you do and how you do it counts, and you have to make it varied. The more varied your activities, the better. Good things take time. I always say it out loud to myself when things get frustrating. And they do get frustrating when, for example, I don't understand the language still, when I would like to talk to someone and I still just understand the gist of it, when I don't understand the radio. So you have to remind yourself that it takes massive exposure to understand the language. It takes volume, it takes sampling. These are the most important nutrients for your brain. So on the one hand, you need massive exposure. On the other hand, you have to find a system to distribute this massive exposure. You have to do it day by day. That's the best way. And how to do that? Well, just one good strategy is to associate your listening activity with something else. For example, you just listen to something that you can obviously understand, and you do it while you're doing something else. I myself do some workout in the morning while I listen to Polish podcasts. So remember, do something every single day, be consistent. Good things take time, but if you do that, you will make it happen. So here you have it. Listening and understanding a language takes time, but it's not difficult. You learn how to do it, and you have to be consistent. Now, if you want to know more, just click on the description box below and head over my blog, where you will be able to listen to the article I've put together, and you can even just listen to it. So you can do this while doing something else, as I suggested in this very same video. Now, I have one question and one extra tip for you. Let's start with the question. What is the biggest struggle that you have when it comes to listening comprehension? And what have you done to overcome it? Or what do you think you can do to overcome it? So, since you've been so patient, I want to reward you for your patience, and I'm going to give you one cool extra tip. And here it is. When we think about listening, we tend to think that listening is just a passive activity. You just listen to something and the sounds flow into your ear. But you can actually do something that can completely change your strategy and your listening comprehension, and that is be active. Let me give you a very simple example. When you listen to something that obviously you can understand, you can just listen to it, maybe you're running some errands, or you can sit down and take notes. When you take notes, you will realize how your attention changes because your entire body is listening to that piece of information. So the next time, take a YouTube video, listen to it, and take notes, and you will see how that influences and improves the way you understand the piece of content and the way you absorb it.